can hear the translation, we have them available. And we have, yeah, please. Actually, you want to say that?
Hola, soy María de la Cruz, aquí representando el Club Demócrata de aquí arriba, the Northern Manhattan Democrats for Change. Es un placer estar aquí hoy. Voy a dar una introducción un poquito más larga, pero el que necesita máquinas de traducción, necesita interpretación, aquí están. So, si no hablan inglés muy bien o desean estar un poco más cómodo con el lenguaje, aquí tenemos máquinas de traducción. Gracias.
We want to thank everyone for being here. We want to start out this forum by honoring and celebrating a giant an American giant, certainly a giant in social justice and activism, a giant in New York, and a giant in my life personally, and I'm certain the lives of others who are here as well. This morning, we lost Hazel Dukes. Hazel Dukes was the long-standing president of the New York State Conference of the NAACP. Hazel Dukes spent the last 50 or 60 plus years of her life dedicated to racial and social justice. And today we lost a giant, but we are stronger and better, a city, state, and nation because of her life and her sacrifice. So at this time, let us have a brief moment of silence to honor the late, great, and incomparable Hazel M. Dukes. Hazel Dukes was a mentor to many of us, and we stand here today because she taught some of us how to do what we're doing, how to serve the public. And we are happy to be here today in Washington Heights with our partners, the Northern Manhattan Democrats, and here representing Washington Heights as a district leader, as a member of the Northern Manhattan Democrats. We are joined, she's already introduced herself, but we will allow her to come and bring some words of greetings, and then we will get into the candidates with their opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm very grateful to be here. Like I said, my name is María de la Cruz. I am the district leader for Washington Heights, Inwood, and Marble Hill. So it is a pleasure to have you all here. This is an extremely diverse neighborhood. It is a beautiful neighborhood, and I'm grateful that some of the candidates chose to come and make sure that they have our vote up in this district. It is beautiful to work with. Thank you for all of the work that you do. Thank you to all of the partners in ensuring that we have unity in this district, that we have unity in New York City. And during these difficult times, we need unity, we need respect, and we want to make sure that everyone here feels like they're being seen and they're the community that they live in. And I also want to second the condolences to Ms. Hazel Dukes, a beautiful person, a person that wanted to make sure that everyone was involved in this democratic process. And we're just happy to be here. And again, welcome to Washington Heights.
Thank you. We are happy to be in partnership with the largest hip-hop station in the country, Hot 97, the largest R&B station in the country, WBLS, and one of the largest networks of local papers anywhere in the state, Schnepp's Media. We are in partnership to empower and embolden the voice of all and everyday New York. We're going to go in order of arrival and allow the candidates to give opening remarks, and then we will go into a question and answer. If any of you out there have any questions, feel free to hold them, and then at a time appropriate, you will have an opportunity to question the candidate. Again, in order of arrival, let us hear now from our New York City Comptroller, Mr. Brad Lander.
Buenas tardes a todos. Soy Brad Lander, el Contralor de Ciudad de Nueva York. Gracias al reverendo Christian Foy de Arc of Justice y de Mayoral de Northern Manhattan Democrats for Change por moderar el encuentro de hoy. Estoy encantado por la oportunidad de estar aquí con ustedes para discutir la futura de nuestra ciudad. Me postulo para alcalde para garantizar una ciudad más segura, más asequible y mejor administrada por todos los neoyorqueños. I'm going to switch to English to express my words of grief about Mama Dukes. Like everyone else here, she was just a tower for justice. Her voice, her smile, her steely look of determination, it is with us. She showed courage for 93 years in this fight, and we're going to continue with her memory and with that expectation she would be bringing. For mayoral candidate, she would be demanding that we stand up to Donald Trump, that we insist on fighting for the diversity, equity, and inclusion that makes New York City what it is, which is why doing this forum, this first bilingual forum, is so powerful and important. That's why I've been proud in the Comptroller's Office to do the first racial wealth gap studies, looking at both Black and Latino New Yorkers, why I've been proud to increase the assets of the pension funds managed by Black and Latino and Asian and women asset managers by $6 billion, nearly 40% in my time in office to work to confront that racial wealth gap. And she would also be pushing us fight on the things that New Yorkers are fed up with, the cost of living, fighting for more affordable housing, fighting for safer streets, subways in our neighborhood. I'm proud as controller to have invested in the creation and preservation of more affordable housing than all past city controllers combined. That's the kind of leadership that I will bring the mayor's office. I'll end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, so our streets and subways are safer and our cities more humane. I'll invest unprecedented levels of affordable housing to keep people in their homes and create new affordable housing, including affordable home ownership for working families in neighborhoods like this one. I'll make sure the cities run better. We've got good quality of life in all neighborhoods. And when things happen, like when Elon Musk came and stole $80 million from New York City a couple of weeks ago, I will fight back hard, get our city in court, and work hard every single day to protect New York. Gracias.
Former Assembly Member Michael Blake of the Bronx.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. First and foremost, to, of course, Reverend Foy and Mary, the blessing that you both allow us to be here and allow me to offer condolences to Mama Duke. I sent Kirsten a photo of when we were all together in 2016 doing a press conference together. She was the civil rights leader of our women generation, and we owe her a debt of gratitude for all she has done. I come to you as a former assembly member who did the work across this city, not just in the Bronx. During COVID, it was my team that led the effort with World Central Kitchen to feed families when the government was not helping people. When I served in the White House with President Obama. We created the My Brother's Keeper program so that boys and young men of color could go to school and graduate from school. As a son of Jamaican immigrant, I say very clearly that all of us are aligned in the immigration conversation. Latino, Caribbean, African, and all as one. And ICE has no business in our schools, has no business at our community centers, no business at our church. We come here right now fundamentally to say I'm running for mayor to focus on 3 different things. First, the true cost of living. It is simply too expensive to be in New York right now. And I've said very consistently that we need to have a guaranteed income at living wage, which would be higher than what people are making right now. We need to have universal child care, and we need a local median income because we can actually know what the expenses are on the ground. Second, we need affordable housing. That means we should not have rent being determined by credit scores. A credit score is a racist policy that's blocking out black and brown people from getting a home, and it's simply wrong. We need to have middle-class housing to make sure we can also have opportunities as well. And around public services, it's the vision around what happens with our public schools of civics and financial literacy and mental health for our kids. It's about having public safety, because you should be able to go home and get home safe every single day and every single night, and also address the mental health concerns that are happening in our city at the same time. So I come to you as the only candidate with White House experience in the President Obama, State House experience in the Assembly, and local experience as a reverend or community organizer to say, if you want change from Eric Adams and you do not want to go back to nursing home Cuomo, you have a chance to do something different. My name is Michael Blake, and I ask for your vote to be the next mayor of New York City because we deserve better. Very briefly, because I know our time is here, to our great colleagues that are here, to Jessica, to Brad, to Scott, and I know Zellnor's on his way. If someone is running for mayor and they do not have the guts to show up before you for a forum or a meeting, they don't deserve your vote. Mi nombre es Michael Blake, brevemente asambleísta para candidato Distrito 79 y el candidato para alcalde para Nueva York. Pero, ¿por qué? Necesita cambio ahora. I'm Jamaican, I speak Spanish, I'm from the Bronx. That's what we get down right now. All right, y'all.
Mike Blake up here showing off. The fighting state senator from Queens, right across the East River. Let us receive State Senator Jessica Ramos.
Thank you, Rev. Thank you, Mariel. Muchísimas gracias. This is an excellent forum for engaging every single corner of our city during this very important election. But I would be remiss if I didn't also first recognize that we've lost a tremendous pillar in our community, Mama Dukes, who really spoke out, stood up for all of us. You know, seldom has a woman had an opportunity in New York City to really be heard by everyone and to create lasting change. And as women, particularly women of color in New York City, we know that we are the backbone of our economy. We are the foundation of our homes. We are the glue that keeps this city together and working together. So I want to send my condolences to Mama Dukes' family, her friends, her acquaintances, and every community member that was touched by her service. Thank you to the NAACP, of course, and thank you to those hosting today. Mi nombre es Jessica Ramos. Soy la senadora estatal que representa el Distrito 13 en Queens. Orgullosamente soy hija de inmigrantes colombianos. Soy nacida y criada en esta ciudad, madre de 2 hijos. Llevo ya casi 7 años trabajando en el Senado para poder obtener una vida más asequible para nosotros. My name's Jessica Ramos. I'm the state senator from District 13 in Queens. I've spent this last 7 legislative sessions in the New York State Senate fighting for our affordability. If your minimum wage went up, that was because of my legislation. If you've been able to now qualify for childcare subsidies, that's been because of my legislation. if you were an excluded worker from unemployment insurance during the pandemic and you were able to get a check from New York State, that was because of my legislation. So many people in New York know my work and have been able to have a fighting chance to keep making New York City their home. But it's been tough from Albany to see the mismanagement at the city level when it comes to our children's education and the disrespect towards our strides in universal pre-K and 3K, making sure we are giving our young people opportunity to keep them off the street and keep them busy trying to find and fulfill their best potential. And of course, making sure that we are protecting our seniors and their health care, especially those who have retired from civil service in our city. There is a lot that we need to do in order to make sure that this is a city that works for everyone. For a long time, New York City has worked for those who have benefited from the work that people in neighborhoods like Washington Heights or Jackson Heights, where I'm from, or Harlem, or Bed-Stuy and Brownsville, or the North Shore of Staten Island have done, the work that everyone has done to make so much wealth in New York City possible. We need leadership in our city that's not only unafraid to stand up against Donald Trump, but who is ready to lead on initiatives and on managing our city agencies to really deliver effective services in making sure that people are healthy of body and mind, and of course, of making sure that our streets are clean and our homes have the best possible chance to prosper. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí hoy y ser parte de esta conversación. Ojalá reciban la información necesaria para poder salir a votar el 24 de junio, para que puedan compartir con sus vecinos. Y recuerden, aquí en New York, here in New York, we're asking people to dream this year. Don't rank Eric or Andrew for mayor. We want a new city. We want new leadership to open a new chapter for the best city in the world. Thank you.
Right. He's no stranger to any of us. Served as state assembly member from Manhattan. He served as the borough president of Manhattan. He has served as the comptroller of Manhattan. And I believe somewhere in the last century, he was born somewhere around Washington Heights. Maybe it was before it was Washington Heights, right? Let's hear from former comptroller Scott Stringer.
I'm not going to mess with the pastor, but I have to say. Good morning, everybody. And like many people here today, we got the sad news about Hazel Duke. And she led a long and powerful life. She fought for people who didn't have a voice. A lot of people today may never remember who was fighting for them all those years. We do. But it was Hazel and the NAACP. And I just want to say condolences to you, Hazel, but that if you were here and now you're watching over us, you would say to us, we better make this count, because this is the most important mayoral election in a lifetime. Is that true, Rev? All right. So I want to start out by saying I'm a kid from the Heights. I grew up on these streets. I went to PS 152 on Nagel. I went to 52 on Academy Street. Now, I went to Kennedy, not GW. I'm not taking that back. And what I learned about navigating my life, my youth in this neighborhood, was that we all knew, wherever we came from, that in the schoolyard, we had to get along. We had to watch each other's backs. It didn't matter where you came from or how you started or what your parents did. It didn't matter. It was about us learning to navigate life. And I remember very clearly in the schoolyard at PS 152 before they built the mini school. I remember two things I learned from that experience that carried me throughout the world in my lifetime. The first is you never, ever attack someone based on their race or religion, or you were going to have a problem, right? Second, you never, ever made fun of someone's mother. And if you learn those two things early in life, right, we'll be okay. So I want to tell you why I'm back in running for mayor. Because now I have two public school kids of my own. And I worry about our children. I worry about the seniors who invested so much in our communities. When the gentrifiers come in, you know who leaves? The people who built up our neighborhood. And that's not right. And that's not what we should expect or support. So I want to use my skills as a state legislator, as a borough president, and as controller. All that work that I've done, I want to now bring it to City Hall and clean out the corruption, clean out the lack of progress. I want to build affordable housing, Mitchell-Lama 2.0. You remember 99 Hillside, 17 Fort George, right? You know those buildings. Those were integrated buildings, and we need more of that around the city. You know Bridge Apartments. You know what it was like near Dykeman Houses where I grew up around the corner. We can build this kind of aspirational housing for future generations and at the same time keep our people here. And education, it's not equal. You know this, right? You know that there are some kids who do well because their parents have resources and others who don't. I saw it at PS 152 when my own brother had dyslexia back in the 70s, and nobody knew what to do for him except a single parent mother like mine. So I want to make sure that even years, decades later, we can continue to tackle and solve that problem. And lastly, I want to tell you something that you may not remember. Government for me is a lifelong journey. My mother was the first woman ever to serve in the city council from this neighborhood. My cousin Bella Abzug was a congresswoman like none other. And my stepfather, Carlos Cuevas, was the highest ranking Latino appointed official for a time in this city after David Dickens became mayor. So I have not just the skills, but the passion and the lifelong commitment to this city. And I ask you to give me consideration. Thank you very much.
You want to?
Good afternoon again. I'm just going to give brief remarks from our Congressman, Adriano Espaillat. Adriano Espaillat represents the 13th Congressional District, which is, of course, Washington Heights, Inwood, Marble Hill, the West Bronx, and all of Harlem. We wanted to make sure that we had a forum here in a community where sometimes folks that actually end up getting elected may not even visit, may not see the importance of, and we want to make sure that people of color are represented appropriately. As a person who was undocumented, who became a congressman, what's going on right now in Washington is not okay. We need to make sure that we preserve our immigrant communities, and we want to make sure that whoever is the next mayor has a strong stance supporting our immigrants that are hardworking people, that are people that have built these neighborhoods, and that are people that want to stay here. Thank you. Lo digo en español brevemente. Yo estoy aquí también representando a nuestro congresista Adriano Espaillat, que es el líder del Northern Manhattan Democrats for Change. Él es parte o representa el Distrito 13 del Congreso, que es Marble Hill, Washington Heights, el West Bronx, todo Harlem y Inwood. Él, como siendo la primera persona que se hizo congresista, siendo indocumentado, es importante que la persona que sea el próximo alcalde represente a las comunidades de inmigrantes, represente al pobre, represente a todos, porque los inmigrantes aquí hicieron este vecindario, mejoran este vecindario y merecen permanecer aquí. Gracias.
We've been joined by New York State Senator from Brooklyn, Zellnor Myrie, who is rushing up here. Don't fall. Arc of Justice ain't got no insurance. Come on up here.
Okay. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Thank you for having me. Apologies for being late. We're running all over the city today. Very important for me to be here. I, of course, want to offer condolences, as I've heard some of my colleagues have also offered, to Dr. Hazel Duke, and her family. She was a titan fighting for the rights that so many of us enjoy now. And it was an honor to work with her on many issues, and her memory is very much with us today. I'm the proud son of 2 Costa Rican immigrants. Both of my parents came to this city for opportunity. That is why most people come here. That is why most people stay here. And it is our job as leaders in this city to fight to maintain that opportunity for every single New Yorker. Right now, we have an administration that isn't concerned about standing up for vulnerable New Yorkers, but is concerned about saving their own skin. And we have people that are getting into this race, rumored to get into this race, that aren't about standing up for this city, but about rehabilitating their own image. And so I'm proud to be talking about the issues here today, about protecting every single New Yorker, regardless of their immigration status, but also giving them the opportunity that my parents had to send their son to public schools, to become a lawyer, to become a state senator, and to live in the very community that I'm proud to represent now. I want to own a home like a lot of people, but my wife and I find that out of reach for us. I want to feel safe like everyone else, but things feel different on our subways. We want to make relief for our working parents, but we don't have after school for all. I want to change that as the next mayor, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation today. Thank you so much.
So we're gonna go into the Q&A portion. I'm gonna throw out some questions, and the candidates are gonna grab them. First and foremost, on the agenda of the Arc of Justice is reaffirming the principles and the values espoused by the Constitution of the United States of America. And we are here as a city that is being intentionally divided through bad, racist policies that are seeking to shred the fabric of communities like the very one we sit in today. How do each of you plan on fighting the xenophobia that is being enshrined in federal policy, like mass deportation, the elimination of asylum programs, and the building of walls around the United States? How do you plan on leveraging the platform and the power of the greatest city on earth to fight back against some of the most wicked and divisive and racist policies we've seen in recent years coming out of the White House? Grab that.
Kirsten, I'm going to answer your question, but I do want to say one thing first, because I know some of us are going to have to run to another forum, and I think while all 5 of us are here, I just want to let folks know that while we're sitting up here in Washington Heights talking to all of you, former Governor Andrew Cuomo has chosen not to come here, but instead to announce his entry into the race in about the last 15 minutes with a 17-minute video. I'm sure you'll all be thrilled to watch it. So, and you know, when Kirsten did the very first forum up in the Bronx a few months ago, he said, you know, you should remember who came to your neighborhood and who talked to you about safety, who talked to you about housing affordability, who talked to you about the rights you have under the Constitution, and not people who harassed 11 women, who worked for him, who sent seniors to their deaths in nursing homes, who starved the subway, who cut health care, and who is just running to rehabilitate his own reputation, not to fight for New Yorkers. So I loved what Jessica said. There's the dream idea. Don't rank Eric or Andrew for mayor. You got 5 slots on your ballot. You got 5 people here talking to you this morning. I'm just saying. On your question, though, which is really important. I mean, these are urgent times. One other thing Andrew Cuomo has not done is said one single word about what Donald Trump has been doing in the White House to have mass deportations, to take money out of the health care we need, to cut the budget of the city of New York. You know I will fight that fight because you've seen me fighting it these last few weeks when Elon Musk came and took $80 million out of our bank account that we had been given for shelter and services for asylum seekers that Congress had authorized, that FEMA
had paid us, and the current administrator, even though he's a Trumpster, had signed off on the payment, and nonetheless, they yanked that money back. I was the one who rang the alarm bell. We learned yesterday that Mayor Adams' budget officials wouldn't even sign the paperwork to go into court because they know their boss works for Donald Trump and not for you. But I got the governor on our side. I rang the alarm bell. The city is in court. We're going to get that money back, and we're going to spend it where we need it in New York City. I'll stand up for our sanctuary laws. I won't let ICE in our schools or shelters or public hospitals. This is the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known. It has been a safe haven for Jews and Dominican and Chinese folks and Bangladeshis. And it is sure as hell going to make sure that the Venezuelans and the folks from Senegal who are here today get the opportunities that our parents and grandparents did. And as mayor, I'll make sure they do.
Anyone else? Yeah, nah, good.
Eric Adams does not care about the immigrant community. He's making it very clear because he's working for Donald Trump and Elon Musk in every possible way to make sure that our immigrants are not protected. And you think about the leadership in this room. Every single day, you have to ask yourself, are communities safe right now? The reason why we've had a drop in attendance rate at schools is you have families that are afraid to leave their house right now. The reason why you have street vendors that are concerned is because at any moment they're wondering if ICE is going to roll up on them. And we also have to make sure we expand the humanity of this. It is not just the Latino community that's scared. It's the Caribbean community, it's the African community, it's the Asian community. All of us as immigrants are scared right now. And so when we think about what's at stake, first and foremost, our communities will not be safe with Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo as mayor. Full stop. Now it's about going a step further about what are you going to do? First and foremost, when you have 180,000 of our immigrant brothers and sisters showing up for court right now without legal representation, we have to make sure you have a chance and you have that representation so you can actually have a chance to stay. Second, if we actually reimbursed our nonprofits faster, as opposed to nonprofits having to wait to get paid, including the one we're in right now, it fundamentally will make sure you have the protections. Why? Because you're the ones that are making sure that our children and families actually have a place to be. Third, we have to have greater language access because it doesn't really make sense that we continue to have paperwork that's happening for our immigrants and it's only in English. It's actually not helping all of our communities have a chance to be able to engage. And then going a step further, it's working in collaboration with our great Attorney General, Tish James, and our district attorneys as well, so that we actually have the protections in place for our people. And I come to you in this zone as someone who was a co-sponsor of the DREAM, what we did in Assembly, and equally what I did in DC and what we've done here locally. This is the latest reminder. You need to have a mayor who understands what's supposed to happen in DC, in the state, and here locally to protect us. Because today is the latest reminder of that. And so if we want to make sure we protect our people, have one of us as your mayor, not the other two.
It's no exaggeration to say that without our immigrant population, New York City would be nothing. People who make our food, people who take care of our children, people who clean homes, people who serve in restaurants. Our economy would collapse without our immigrant population. And that is something to be proud of, not something to hide. I have been very critical of Eric Adams' mismanagement of the migrant influx. We are a town of 7 law schools, and not once was there an immigration clinic brought about to help our immigrants get on a path to apply for their asylum, seek the work permits they need, and be able to find a way to legalize their status in our city and in our country. There are many times that we can use the law as a shield to protect us, knowing that as a sanctuary city, we have laws that only allow us to share information in the case of heinous crimes being committed, but there is also an opportunity to use it as a sword and say that as a sanctuary city, we want to know everyone who's here, what talents they bring, so that we can help channel them into the opportunities that are available so that they can establish a life in our city. Our city lost a great deal of population throughout the pandemic. And with our immigrants arriving, it is a breath of fresh air for our economic prosperity and certainly for our small businesses. New York City is known for being a big real estate city, a big financial industry city, but really it's about the small businesses that we see here in Washington Heights, that we see in Brooklyn, that we see in every corner of our great city. So helping our immigrants be able to achieve some stabilization of their lives here in New York City is first and foremost a priority. We have to be willing to sue the federal government when there is an infringement upon the Bill of Rights and the rights of every single person, human being in this city. And there is no reason why a mayor of the city of New York should be allowing ICE to enter our schools, our churches, our libraries, our hospitals, or any public institution where every single New Yorker should feel safe. That is what a mayor of the city of New York who respects the roots of our city should be doing. And that is what I will do as your mayor.
The wonder of this community is always watching each other's back. And during Trump 1, I remember going to the church on 181st Street in Fort Wash to visit a family that was being protected by the church and the community because they were targeting her family and her for deportation. Yes, lived in the church with the community surrounding the family. And I remember saying to the young woman with the kids running around, "What is this to you?" And she said, "I am blessed that this community is showing up with food and books and blankets." That's what community does. But here's what a mayor has to do. A mayor has to take a no-nonsense approach. Zero tolerance. It's true, Jessica's right. The kids aren't going to school. The kids in my kids' school are not showing up anymore, and they're asking, where are they? Because could you imagine being in a situation where you would, for 1 minute, would think that you could lose your child forever? And that has happened. I've been at 26 Federal Plaza with a daughter who never thought she would ever see her father again. Separation in life is not what we as human beings expect with our families. And when Eric Adams showed up to a school, an auditorium late at night with about 50 cops, and he looked around the school that night and saw all these young kids, migrant kids, sleeping on the floor with their single parents, and he said, "Mission accomplished. This is a success." And what he did not realize, and you realize this, and the people up here realize this, those children sleeping on the floor, that is our investment. They are the future Pulitzer Prize winner, the future engineer, the future tech expert, the future mayor, the future controller. We are sacrificing the life of New York City because we're not willing to stand up. And here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm asking the state legislature to front $500 million in state money in the budget. Let the city match $500 million. That's $1 billion. So when they claw the $80 million back on migrant services and the like, we replenish. Why is that a good strategy? Because we have 18 months to get to the next congressional election, with Hakeem Jeffries will be the speaker. That is the short-term mayor plan that we must create. Second, I'll tell you right now, the next time Some bank just calls up and says, you know, we lost $80 million. I don't know. No. We're meeting. You're going to explain to me what your early warning system. Because if we can't replenish what we don't. Why do I think I can do this? Because I have the skill. I paid them. I know what to do. And that's what we're going to do. Remember? I was the controller. There's a song, Control, never mind, I'll tell you that. But that's what we have to do, and that's what I believe to my court. Thank you.
My dad could make more as a minimum wage factory worker in Brooklyn than he could make back home in Costa Rica with a college degree. He came to this city, as did my mom, for one simple thing: to work. That's why people come here. So as the next mayor, I want to introduce something called Work NYC, a New York City specific work permit that allows anyone to come here and work for a local employer. And I'm a lawyer. I've read the case law. I know what's going on the federal and local level. It may not be a slam dunk. Some people may challenge us in court. But this is New York City. We got to lead the way. When I proposed Work NYC, City Hall said, well, no other city has tried this before. Who cares? We're New York City. We will lead. I want to put people to work, and I want to do it immediately. And let me just say this. It's been 40 days since Trump has been in office. 40 days since he has attacked our immigrants head on. 40 days since he has had this mayor under his thumb. 40 days that he's been scaring our families from attending school, from going to the hospital, from getting services. 40 days. And what has Andrew Cuomo said? Nothing. Not one word. And he's announcing today that he is going to try to run this city? He doesn't even have the courage to utter Donald Trump's name. Give me a break. We need a mayor that is going to stand up for our community, not afraid to fight. Be creative about solutions. And that's the kind of mayor that I'm going to be.
So real quick, yes or no, would you affirm New York City's sanctuary city status as mayor? Brad? Mike?
Hello.
Claro.
Absolutamente.
Yes.
All right. The candidates are unified on the issue of New York City's sanctuary city status, and that's important. It's important not just because of the community and the room that we're in, but it's important for the economy. It's important for the future of this city that we continue to welcome people. New York City is the home of Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty. And we're going to slam the door here? No, we don't do that here in New York City. So we're glad that they have affirmed New York City's sanctuary status. We're all dealing with affordability. We're all dealing with inflation. The price of eggs hitting $10, $11, $12, depending on the day in the community. We're dealing with soaring rents. We're dealing with now a congestion pricing plan. Some people refer to it as a tax. Some people refer to it as an investment in our environment. As the mayor of the city of New York, you don't necessarily have the authority to determine whether congestion pricing exists here. But as the mayor, what would you do, what could you do to help those who are living on the margins economically? How can you leverage the city's $150 billion, whatever the size of the budget is? How can you leverage New York City's power and wealth to help make it more affordable for the people who make it run?
The biggest cost of living challenge, the biggest affordability problem is housing, and everybody in this neighborhood knows it. The rent is 30% higher than it was just a couple years ago before the pandemic. The asking rent in Manhattan for the the average unit is $4,000. No working person can afford that. I've been working on the affordable housing crisis my entire life. Long before I got into city government, I spent 15 years running the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center for Community Development, fighting for tenants' rights and keeping people in their homes, working to strengthen the rent laws, creating and preserving thousands of units of affordable housing. In the city council, I led the Gowanus rezoning, where 8,000 units, 3,000 of them genuinely affordable to low-income and working-class families, starting at $700, $800 a month, are going up right now. Look online. It's a beautiful new community with a lot of affordable units. When Signature Bank failed and put 35,000 units of rent-stabilized housing at risk, many of them in this neighborhood, as controller, I teamed up with some of our asset managers and bought the mortgages on all 35,000 of those units. They are still affordable rent-stabilized housing. Nobody has lost their homes, and we're generating an 11% return for the retirees of this city. I've invested in the creation and preservation of more affordable housing units than all past controllers combined. And that's the kind of leadership I am going to bring to City Hall. We'll have you can look it up, Scott. You can look it up. We'll add up the numbers. I'll show it to you. Sorry to tell you. Combined.
Hey, watch that rank, Brad.
Yeah, all right. Well, we got 5 slots. All right. He'll get his turn. And he's a big fighter for affordable housing, too, no doubt of that. We all are, because that is the future of this city. So, as I mentioned in my opening, a big thing we got to do is put affordable home ownership back into our affordable housing programs. Well, of course, we need rental housing. We got to get homeless folk off the street. But people in this neighborhood, look, when my wife and I in 1996 went to buy, we were able to buy a co-op in Brooklyn for $125,000. And that's why we were able to raise our kids in Brooklyn. But folks can't do that these days because there is nothing like that. If we're going to upzone, if we're going to build on public or private land, the units should be affordable co-op for working and middle-class families. We can do that again. We can also restore the programs that protect tenants. When I was in the council, I co-sponsored the bill creating a right to counsel. So if you're a tenant facing eviction, you're supposed to have a lawyer. We got up to 2/3 of families having them, but Eric Adams has failed to invest the money, failed to contract with the lawyers, abused the procurement system, and now fewer than half the tenants who are entitled are getting the lawyers they were promised. I will protect our tenants. I will build more affordable housing. I will make this a more affordable city. Thank you very much.
We are all friends and we are all allies. So let's be clear. In a primary, someone has to actually explain to you how they will do this. Because any of us can talk through different respective ideas. So let's start from the place of what the actual expenses are when it comes to affordability. Right now, for someone who does not have a child, it says that the living wage, not minimum wage that they need, is $32 an hour. And for a family with children of 2, it's $69 just to be at living wage. So let's start from a place that anyone talking about just getting the minimum wage is not doing enough. It's not acceptable. It's not going to help anyone pay your bills. So I have said very clearly, we need to have a guaranteed income that is at a minimum at living wage, because if you do that, you'll make sure you're actually making more money automatically. I'm not hoping for it. It will actually then happen. Then you have to actually reduce the cost of what New Yorkers are going through. So when we talk about affordable housing, we need to have a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 that is middle-class housing, because right now you effectively have to be very rich or poor enough to get housing in New York. You have to change the laws so that developers and landlords are not getting incentives to actually then make sure they're blocking you out. Why would you continue to give a tax incentive for someone that's actually not giving you housing? We should not be doing that in any regard. I will continue to say we have no reason why credit scores are being used for rent or home ownership applications because it's blocking people out. When you talk about the other expenses that are happening for someone around food, around transportation, around housing, and also childcare, you need to ask and listen, will someone commit to universal childcare, regardless if you have a child by blood? We've all been talking about Mama Dukes. At the end of the day, we have to make sure we're helping our kids. Because if you are able to take the expense of home and childcare off the table, and you make more money, that is how you actually have a chance. Even the little kid just agreed to me right there, right? And so fundamentally, it's also about people explaining how do you run and lead a $115 billion budget and change what is happening right now. There's $1.3 billion of overtime that was spent with the NYPD last year that Eric Adams was not keeping control over, and that money went to effectively a sex corruption scandal. That's not me saying, that's what the actual story said. So when you talk about $1.3 billion that they weren't tracking, when you talk about the cuts that are coming from DC, I have also said that we need to have a pied-à-terre tax, which would not have impact on any person in that room. What this means, if someone does not have their primary residence here, but they have a vacant land and vacant own that they have here, tax that individual because you will generate hundreds of millions of dollars for New Yorkers. But I'm also going to go a step further. Every time Donald Trump is talking about trying to withhold money from us, in particular with Medicaid, we should withhold sending federal taxes to DC. It makes no sense at all that we would be helping a misogynistic dictator who has not cared about our communities. Remind people, this is the same man who took out the full-page ad on the Central Park Five, black and brown kids. The same man who said that Mexicans were rapists. The same man that said that black people should not be here. And so why on earth would we give money to a government that's not helping us? So to tie it together, I'm giving you an actual plan on how do you make more money, how do you keep more money, how do you ensure that our expenses are lower, and I created the prompt pay bill so we could pay our businesses faster. You do that, that's how we address affordability. Our entire vision on this, if you go, is at blakefornyc.com.
Thank you. Well, this question started out about congestion pricing. So I want to talk a little bit about that and then lead into the affordability of our city. It's true that as mayor, I would not be able to really impact the congestion pricing law, although I'm very proud to have voted for it as a state senator. What is within the mayor's purview is enforcing that the license plates on vehicles across our city are not tampered with, including NYPD vehicles. Right. There is placard abuse that has been rampant on the streets of New York for a very long time. And so being able to rein in the scofflaws to make sure that we have respect for the law and a functioning program is paramount to getting the money that we need in order to have the MTA we deserve. That being said, there are decades of disinvestment in our public transit system that we've had to make up for. And so being able to usher in bus rapid transit from the outer corners of our great city is really important in order to bring people in to what's considered our city center. But let me say that our city is getting more decentralized from Manhattan every day. A lot of people live and work in their home borough or live and work here uptown in Manhattan. And we want to make sure that our streets here are safe and, of course, including our MTA stations. So making sure that there are our mental health institutions available so that we're not waiting for somebody to hurt somebody else or hurt themselves because they're clearly suffering or struggling with severe mental illness is really important. And I am going to remind you who closed our mental health institutions over a decade ago, because he just announced that he's running for mayor of this city. It was Andrew Cuomo who closed down our mental health institutions, and it is his fault that people are not getting the help that they need in order to keep themselves and others safe. Let's not wait for a crime to be committed. Let's actually do the work of preventive medicine so that we can keep our families whole and be safe as soon as possible. In terms of affordability, my colleagues are right in that we agree on the core values that we want to see in a new mayor. And what's important is the experience that we
Thank you. I would like to announce following this forum, I will be selling tickets to the pay-per-view controller versus controller fight. It's gonna be, it's nobody, we don't deport, Joe. I might deport you, Joe, because you're always doing these outbursts, but we love you, Joe. A spirited debate. We want a spirited debate. You can't be no chump and be the mayor of the city of New York. So we also have the question that has been raised. All right, we got to move on now. We got the question that's been raised repeatedly in this forum and others around mental health. When you look at what's happening on our public transit system, it is the intersection of public health, mental health in particular, public safety, and mass transit. Two of these have massive budget. Public safety got a $8-9 billion NYPD budget. Mass transit, I don't even want to get into the books of the MTA, but multi-billion-dollar agency. And then you have public health with respect to mental health. Pittance. We are not investing in developing an infrastructure to deal with mental health in particular. As mayor, what would you do? What approach would you take with respect to many of these crimes, these acts of violence that we are seeing, that really is a testament to the failure of the public health system and should not be just shifted over to public safety for the police to handle? What approach would you take to treating and investing in our public health infrastructure? And would you take the same methodology of criminalizing our ill, or would you seek to treat? I know there's a lot of personal opinion in that question, but answer correctly.
So look, there really is this crisis playing out around the city, and a lot of it's happening below ground. When I take the kids to school on a lot of the mornings, what you see in the subway are people who are homeless, who have mental health issues, existing on the train, not because they're there to do people harm, but because they have nowhere else to go. They don't get their medicine, they don't get food, they don't get the services that they need, and they are literally dying in front of us. My kids see it every morning. Why is that man or that woman just struggling, sound asleep with nowhere to go? And who comes to help? It's usually the cops coming in, dragging the person out, and leaving them on the street. Maybe they get to a public hospital for 48 hours, and then they get dumped back in the street. It is cruel. It's dehumanizing. So the question is, how do we tackle it? One of the candidates here rightly talked about overtime in the police budget, $1.3 billion. That is not necessary, and the reason that's happening is we don't hire enough cops, but when we do, we put them to surge police subway stations to do performative policing, meaning I'm on a phone. I have no direction, nowhere to go. Mayor Adams comes into the police station and he says, hey, technology is what we should be doing. Let's hire that robot K5. You know that robot? Robocop. I'm taking Robocop and I'm sending it to a museum when I'm mayor. And we can all visit it, right? All right, that's it. Bye, Robocop. But then here's what we, so here's what we got to do. We need to mobilize nurses and doctors. Jessica talked about EMT workers. Like, there are people, you'll talk, but I think, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to do ranked choice voting. I'm doing it. I'm trying to be a ranked choicer because I was a little heated the last question. So let's figure out how we bring mental health services directly above ground and below ground, because we are ignoring the reality of people literally dying in the streets, and we can't let that happen in the city. Thank you.
Now I gotta go. Well, look, thank you, Scott, for teeing it all up. I do have a mental health plan called Harmony NYC that you can find on my website, ramosfornyc.com. You know, policing is a very interesting topic for people of color to talk about. And I say that personally. I'm both someone who was stopped and frisked when I was young. I'm also someone who has benefited from a neighbor calling 911 when someone else was hurting me. I want the law to be enforced, but I also want to make sure that there's accountability for everyone equally. No one is above the law. Not a police officer, not Eric Adams, not Andrew Cuomo, and certainly not Donald Trump, the 34-time convicted felon. Right? Right. So we have to be serious about policing. And I don't know about you, but as a former member of the previous administration, I remember when the police gave the former mayor their back at a funeral. And as someone who considers myself a progressive New Yorker and a progressive public servant, I want the police to listen to me and to obey the directives that I will give as mayor. So making sure that we are humanizing the profession, professionalizing our police is paramount. And that has not been happening under Eric Adams. In fact, you might recall a shooting that took place at the Sutter Avenue station in Brooklyn many months ago, when a police officer decided that he was going to follow a man who jumped the turnstile along with other police officers. He shot the man, he shot a bystander, and he shot another police officer within close range. Meaning, you don't have a good shot. We laugh, but it is consequential and fatal for people who are clearly innocent and just are in the wrong place at the wrong time. We cannot afford to have those mistakes done on the streets of New York. So making sure we're bringing back crossfire training that Eric Adams took away, so that sergeants aren't telling me that they're scared of standing in front of new police officers if their guns are drawn. That is not a safe city. What is a safe city is reopening those mental health institutions, making sure we are creating a workforce pipeline for health professions. We're going to need everything from social workers to behavioral therapists to cognitive therapists to psychiatrists in every language, in cada idioma that is spoken by a New Yorker. That is how we keep people safe. Destigmatizing mental health, making sure that our city hospital system isn't just about our body, but about our mind too. So that if you run into your nosy neighbor at the hospital and they're like, hey, what are you doing here? You don't have to tell them. You can say that you're there for a backache and not a heartache. What's important is that you went in there and you talked to someone, and that hopefully you were able to find some relief. And that way you're coping with your challenges, with life's challenges, because there are so many for a New Yorker. Poverty impacts our mental illness in New York City. Being poor puts undue stress on a person who can't pay rent, who can't put groceries on the table for their kids. So all of this is really interconnected, and why we really should be relying on preventive mental health measures so that we're not reacting to the tragedies that take place. Right now, too many young people are engaging in gun violence across our city. That is a public health issue within and of itself. That's why I'm promising a youth jobs guarantee, so that the summer youth employment program isn't just in the summer, it's in every season. So that kids can find their potential, stay busy, hopefully start contributing to their Social Security a little earlier. Those are things that are important in order for us to make sure that every single generation of New Yorkers is safer than the previous one. That's how we make sure our city prospers, and I hope to be able to count on your vote as for mayor. Thank you.
So I want to make sure that when we talk about mental health, that we don't conflate two things. There is a mental health that all of us have to deal with on a daily basis. I say it and make a point of saying that I am in therapy myself in a consistent way, because we often hide that in the shadows, and we are afraid to talk about that. But I want to say it very clearly. And it took me a while to find a therapist that was good for me, but we did the work and were able to get it. I think everyone should be able to get accessible therapy for their mental health. Then we're talking about chronically mental ill New Yorkers who are in our streets and in our subways. And I take the subway every day. This is something that I'm not saying from the podium. This is real life experience. I've been taking it since as far as I can remember. And things feel different on our subways. They feel different on our streets. And we gotta have an approach that addresses both of these things. New Yorkers who are suffering before our eyes and sometimes posing a threat to themselves and to other people. So I have proposed something in my public safety plan called Safe Streets and Safe Subways, which includes not just deploying smartly law enforcement officers, but pairing them with clinicians that can actually help the individuals who are suffering and putting them on the road to recovery. What we are doing now is not working. We are either sending people to emergency rooms where they cycle back out in a couple of days, or sending them to Rikers where they get even worse. There has to be a middle ground here. We want stabilization centers where people can go and be put on a path to true recovery. There is a model that is already working in this city, a clubhouse model, where people go and they have agency on what their treatment looks like. They have agency about how they are going to get treated, where they're going to get treated, when they're going to get treated. That is what we need throughout the city, and we need a mayor that is going to be able to manage that. Right now, about 3,000 chronically mentally ill people are no strangers to our city agencies. They all know who they are, but we have too many disparate interests here. The Health and Hospitals Corporation, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Department of Social Services. They all interact with them, but they do not speak to each other. The mayor has to get all of these agencies together under one deputy that is held accountable, that I can call up every single morning and say, how many people did you help get into permanent housing, not just a shelter, but permanent housing today? That's the kind of accountability and management that we need to truly address this crisis, and that's what I hope to bring as the next mayor.
So first, we shouldn't have police trying to address mental health. They weren't trained on that. And when we think about what's happening too often around our subways and by our buses as well, we should actually have mental health professionals actually be the one that are doing the work when it comes to addressing mental health in our community. Like Z, I was fortunate. We should all be able to talk about this more openly. Talking about your mental health and having a therapist of color in particular is essential. I've never understood why, if something was wrong with your foot, you would go to the doctor. Something was wrong with your hand, you go to the doctor. But we would talk about what's going on in your mind. We're like, well, let's not talk about it. And too often it's because of the stigma that we've allowed to exist, in particular in communities of color. There's nothing wrong with us talking about what's going on with our mind and what's happening within us. It actually makes us stronger. But now we have to go a step further. We actually have to make sure we are opening more and funding more of our overdose prevention centers, our OPC. If you do that consistently, you will then have a better chance to help more of our people that are struggling. You have to get more of the funding that comes down from the opioid settlement from the state, because you have millions of dollars not coming to help people with wraparound service and support. Because if we're talking about what's going on in our community, too often, we're not actually helping the people who need help. Give the funding to the nonprofits, the community centers, and the medical health professionals who can actually support them, then you can take a step further there. And if we do this all simultaneous, then you have a concrete plan on how we are not just helping ourselves to be better, but we're helping our people to be better. And if we want to talk about how it's all get intertwined, it's also the feeling that's existed. If you're going by the subway, if I'm in the South Bronx, so if I'm at 149th 3rd Avenue, if I'm walking by the train station and you see a couple brothers that are struggling, you're going to think about some things, right? You're trying to assess how you move. And so honestly, if we help them to get the support that they need, then we can all feel better and more supported and stop having the stigma that exists right now. And to Senator Ramos' point, it's important for us to remember a lot of the crisis that we are in right now is because Cuomo cut funding and closed centers. Don't let someone try to be your mayor now when they didn't help you before.
Real short question. As mayor, would you support a rent freeze?
All right. So this is a question that we have gotten, I think, in nearly every mayoral forum we've participated in. The question is, do we support a rent freeze? When that's asked, it's really about rent-stabilized, rent-controlled apartment. I have been a rent-stabilized tenant for the past 13 years. I wish I could say I grew up in one, but my undocumented immigrant parents had a really tough time being able to raise me and my sisters. My rent-stabilized apartment got me through divorce, kept the roof over my head with my kids. And that's the story of a lot of New Yorkers who have been struggling to be able to get by in this city. That's why I want to do a rent freeze for our rent-controlled apartments, and I want to do it the right way. With property tax reform, with really tackling the water rates that have only risen under Eric Adams. I mean, how you think about it, he has actually made our life more expensive in every which way. And so actually bringing down the costs of operating an apartment building will help us not only win a rent freeze, but hopefully maintain it so that the rest of New Yorkers can also catch up with our economy. This is about keeping New Yorkers at home, in place. Many of them are seniors. Many of them are young families struggling to get by. These are the folks that we're hearing are leaving New York State to go to other places where they can't afford to buy a home, but we need them right here. And that's what a rent freeze is about to me. Being able to allow New York City to continue to be prosperous for working class and middle class families. Thank you.
Starting in my time in the Assembly, when I was one of a handful of Democrats that actually voted against the compromise that weakened the rent laws, and I stood up and said no. I have gone to the Rent Guidelines Board for close to 25 years, saying no rent increase. That's right, 25 years, because I believe that when you don't open the books, when you don't show what's really going on, why would you get a rent increase? When you're mayor, you can't play checkers. You're now on the inside. You got to play chess. And when they ask me, are you for a rent freeze? I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's be strategic here. Let's not give the enemy the dismissal of like, well, he's playing to the crowd. So here's what I'm going to do. My red guidelines appointees are going to know what to do. And they're going to do it with rational, deliberative data that will protect the people in rent stabilization. How do you know I will do that? Because from day one, I have been the leading tenant leader or advocate when I was in the state assembly, and it never changed for all these years. And with that, I just want to say to Reverend Kirsten Foy, someone I respect as a civil rights leader, as a New Yorker, someone who doesn't pull punches. I want to thank you and all the affiliates who did this great forum today. It's good to be with my colleagues. Obviously, Cuomo is in. We got to make sure he's out. We will do that. I believe that. I know what happened. If many of you remember, anyone remember Spitzer? Remember when he got in the race? I was 20 points behind with 3 weeks to go. You know what happened? We took care of business, and we're going to do it again. Thank you all. It's great to be here. Thank you.
To the question, short answer is yes. Consistently said we support a rent freeze, in particular for rent stabilized. Let's be clear. You got to personalize this and ground this in real ways. I talk about this often. My mama was homeless in Jamaica. In the Bronx, we grew up Crescent and Burnside. We sold dinners to pay rent. At the end of the day, you have to make sure that people can keep a home over their head. And a lot of times, it's bad policies why it's not happening. So simply put to the question, the answer is yes. But now to an extended portion of this. You have to ask yourself, who do you want to lead New York City next year in the midst of 11 months and 11 days of Donald Trump attacking us and us not having the help from Eric Adams? And so if you're looking for someone who is ready immediately, my name is Michael Blake, and I ask for your vote to be the next mayor of New York City. Rev, we appreciate you and love you, and look forward to seeing everybody out there. God bless everybody.
So I grew up in a rent-stabilized apartment. My story would not be possible without it. In the state legislature, I led on passing the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act, the largest expansion of tenant protections for our rent-regulated tenants in over half a century. So I care very deeply about tenants that are in rent-regulated units. And as mayor, I would appoint members to the Rent Guidelines Board that would share that appreciation for tenants and our source of affordable housing. Thank you.
So we're winding down. We've come close to the end of this. I want to thank all of the candidates who have come and shared their vision, who have other things to do. We are in the midst of a petition process, which is very important. Candidates can't run for mayor if they can't get on the ballot. I would ask the candidates as they depart, please don't cause a ruckus. We're still in the midst of our forum. We still have a live stream on Hot 97 and WBLS. So we're asking folks to respect our audience that's present and our audience that is watching online on Hot 97's YouTube and WBLS's Facebook page. We've got two candidates here, and they've got a whole city they got to run around and try to get to. So we want to be respectful and both grateful. We're going to hear from our fighting state senator from Queens, State Senator Jessica Ramos, and then we'll hear from the fighting state senator from Brooklyn, who happens to represent area I grew up in, Crown Heights, Plegna. Y'all don't know nothing about that. We all the way uptown. But we'll hear from them. And if there are any questions, I know Joe Gonzalez has a question because he always has a question, but they're always on point and pertinent. Joe, if you want to ask that question now so they can fold it into their response, go ahead. You're addressing that to both state senators, right? Okay.
Well, thank you for the question. I'll start with the question. I happen to be a senator who, for the past 7 years, has sat on both the Transportation Committee and the Committee on Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions, which provides oversight for the MTA. Let me say that there is no greater dream I have than having public transit in New York City and New York State. The MTA is within the purview of New York State, and I would not want to take out funding from the New York City budget in order to pay for that. I say that because I want the state to take its responsibility of the MTA much more seriously. One of the things I would like to see is for the mayor of the city of New York to be able to appoint the New York City Transit president, for example. But that is not the case right now. And for a long time, we actually saw Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio fight about who was in charge of the subway and who wasn't. And I want to make it clear that it belongs to the state, and the governor is who appoints the head of the MTA. Remember, New York City can't levy its own taxes. Our city budget comes from our property tax and funding that we receive from Albany in order to cover education. Medicare funding and transportation funding can come from the feds. So I wouldn't want to take money out of education, where we need it for universal child care, in order to do this right now, but you can count on my advocacy to make sure we're pushing for it at the state level now and for many, many years to come. I will remind you, I'm one of those New Yorkers without a driver's license. I don't drive a car. I've never owned a car. I depend on public transit to get around, as do both of my teenage sons. So I want to be able to offer them the best possible future. And that's why I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City. And I want to thank you all, especially Mariel and Rev Foy, for organizing this forum today. You should really give yourselves a big round of applause for sticking through, hearing from us all. You heard from 5 candidates today. You will have the opportunity to rank 5 candidates on your ballot come the primary day on June 24th. Right now, as the Reverend said, we are in the middle of petitioning. For those who don't know, that means that there are Democrats walking around New York City with clipboards that have green sheets of paper. There's one right there where you can sign. And we are asking other Democrats in New York City to sign our petitions so that we can get enough signatures in order to qualify to be on that ballot June 24th. I can't leave Washington Heights without saying que viva Quisqueya. You had your Independence Day a few days ago. Como colombiana y una hermana de los dominicanos, yo les agradezco tanto, he tenido tantas amistades, tantas buenas personas dominicanas en mi vida. Les agradezco a todos, a toda la comunidad, lo que han hecho por nuestra ciudad y lo que sabemos que van a seguir poder haciendo con todo el apoyo que necesitan para seguir siendo los dueños de los pequeños negocios, para seguir siendo los taxistas, los barberos, la gente que nos cuida, la gente que nos quiere. Muchísimas gracias y no se les olvide votar. Muy amable.
And Joe, thank you for the question. I think, like most other things in this city, New Yorkers just want the thing to work. And when we get on the subways and when we wait for our buses and we have to either wait a really long time or get delayed a really long time, the frustration is palpable and real. So the New York City budget, I think, is an opportunity for us to leverage on the MTA board, as the state does control the majority of the appointment, for us to say, let's for once fix the 120-year-old signals that delay us every single day. Let's invest in having a more efficient public transit system. And that is something that I want to do as the next mayor. You're going to hear a lot of speeches over the next couple of weeks and months. You're going to get a lot of mail. You're going to see a lot of weird commercials on television. You're going to have people coming up to you at the train station. And what I want to remind you of is none of this is about us as individuals on this stage, or the people that you see on the flyers, or the people that you see on television. This is about you. This is about the future of our city. There are children and families that you will never meet, people that are making their way to this city that you will never have the pleasure of encountering, that are counting on us to step up for them in this moment, to fight for opportunity in this city, to ensure that this city is affordable, and to ensure that it feels safe. We can only do that if we come together in this moment. Don't fall for the okie doke. Leaders of the past telling you that they are the solution to the future. People that have been in power and have done nothing with it for you. It is time to turn the page in this city. And I want to be the next mayor because we deserve better. So thank you to Reverend Foy and Marielle and all of the organizers today. I want to thank you for being here, for joining us online and joining us in the room. And I look forward to seeing you in the streets. Gracias.
We have heard from the candidates who thought it was important enough to join us today. I admonish you, as I've done in the past, remember those who showed up for you. We've also been joined by a fighting elected official from just around the corner in the Bronx. She has been on the front lines fighting against Trump's racist and aggressive policies of mass deportation, ICE invading our communities, and we just want to acknowledge her presence, the Assemblywoman from the Bronx, Amanda Septimo. We want to thank our partners in power, our partners at Hot 97 and WBLS, #1 for hip hop, #1 for R&B. WBLS also happens to be the home of black radio here in the town. And when we were being inundated with all kinds of messaging and misinformation, it was the information and the truth that we were getting on black radio and WBLS that allowed us to keep our plane flying straight. And so we're grateful to WBLS and Hot 97 for their partnership. We're grateful to the partnership of Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who is right now in Orlando, Florida, fighting the good fight. It's important not only that we make sure that we have the right mayor here in the city of New York, but that the Democrats take back the House of Representatives. And that fight can't start a year from now. That fight is going on today. We want to thank all of the candidates. We want to thank Schnepp's Media, one of the proudest local and grassroots media operations and organizations here in the state, for their partnership. I want to thank my Dominicana godmother, Evangelina, who made this all possible. I also want to say Happy Independence Day. We're going to be doing this around the city. This is our second forum. The next few are also going to be bilingual. We're going to be doing it in Creole. We're going to be doing it in Mandarin. We're going to be taking the message that we are one city, indivisible, all across from one corner, from the Bronx to southern Brooklyn. We are not going to let racism and white supremacy and xenophobia divide and destroy our city. And those who are acting as proxies for racism coming out of Washington, you better pack your bags. You better move out of the public housing that you're living in now called Gracie Mansion. Gracie Mansion is public housing. And if you could get up in front of a camera and fix your mouth and say, everybody that's looking to hold you accountable, stupid Negroes. If you don't have the mental acuity or the temperament to lead a city of 10 million people who all speak a different language, come from a different place. You need to be cuffed, thrown in the back of a squad car, and driven off to Rikers Island and serve some time to learn how to deal with people who don't agree with you, brother. That's my commentary. God bless you. Thank y'all for being here.